Good morning, everybody. Bonjour, Nindoy Maganaduk.
Good morning, Wapan Sano. We made it through the night. It's a new day.
Wasn't it a beautiful day last night? A beautiful night. How about a big round of applause for that wonderful plenary last night? And I don't know about you, Trina, that grand entry, bringing in the Indigenous people, being out there and being photographed by 100 people, I feel like Brad Pitt this morning.
And I guess I'm Angelina Jolie. Maybe, no, you're
I like that.
I don't know.
Good morning. I want to introduce myself, and Trina's probably going to do the same. In our custom as Anishinaabe people, as Indigenous people, we introduce ourselves using our language. We acknowledge our spirit name. We acknowledge our clan, which is our family. We all have clans, which is our family. We acknowledge our community and where we're from and the lands we're from. So we do that in our language. I am Anishinaabe. I'm very proud to be Anishinaabe. Any other Anishinaabe in the audience at all? All right, right on.
Nice.
Any Anishinaabe appreciating people out there? Very nice.
Wonderful.
Jakwat Nijnakas, Migizi and Dodem, Nibissing Ojibwe Anishinaabe and Taganing, Minwa Nipissing First Nation, Nin Donje. My name is Bob Goulet, it's my English name. My Anishinaabe name is Mjakwet, which refers to that place in the clouds. It actually talks about that cloud, and beyond that cloud, seeing the beautiful lodge that we're from, that Midewigan, is where my name came from. And happy to be here. I'm from Nipissing First Nation.
That's beautiful, Bob. I learned so much about you. So I'm, as was announced, Pugwachi Wapugwani, and thank you, Jeremy, for trying to pronounce that properly. Pugwachi Wapugwani, wildflowers growing everywhere. I'm originally from the north. I'm Nehiao Esqueo, so I'm Plains Cree, and that means in our language, Nehiao, it's based on the number 4, and we're the people who recognize the 4 corners, the 4 directions, the 4 medicines, the 4 stages of life. So that's how I identify as a woman, Esqueo. And I'm so happy to be here and to see all of you this morning. I hope you had a wonderful rest, and I'm looking forward to the program.
All right, thank you, Trina. Maybe take the time to, instead of, I know you're probably sitting next to your significant other or partner or somebody you already know, how about reaching behind and just shake somebody's hand and let them know your name and where you're from?
Oh, that's so nice.
Very nice, very nice. In the non-native world, this is called networking.
Networking, I like that.
So I want to ask you for your attention. I'm going to introduce the Red Sky Performance, the Red Sky Performers who are here. Red Sky Performance is a leading company of contemporary Indigenous performers here in Canada and worldwide. It's led by the artistic director, my cousin, Sandra Larone. She's Temeogama Anishinaabe from a place called Bear Island, a beautiful, pristine lake in a beautiful, pristine, old-growth forest in Temagami. She is here to provide that performance, to produce it for us. They're currently in their 18th year, and she does a beautiful performance that we call Red Sky at Night in Toronto. It's a wonderful place. So, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Red Sky Performers. Woo! This is the traditional territory of the Miccosauga Anishinaabe, the Anishinaabe people, as well as the Haudenosaunee, the Six Nations Confederacy. This is the home territory of those Indigenous nations. So a round of applause and thanks to the Indigenous nations of this land. Toronto is also one of the largest Indigenous populations in Canada, home to many, many communities that call this home. This has been a traditional meeting place for many, many years, and home to the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. So how about a big round of applause for all those people that call this place home? We start our day off in thanksgiving. We start our day off by invoking the Spirit, asking the Spirit to be with us today. We have these two youth from Six Nations of the Grand River. I'm going to try my Oneida words today and my Cayuga words. Gosenado is here. He is of the Oneida Nation. And we also have Kiaudo, and she is from the Cayuga Nation. So a round of applause for these two youth. And they are joined by their teacher, Tadadaho from the Tuscarora Nation. So we need our teachers. We're very happy to have our teachers. And they're going to bring us Thanksgiving in their language. Aho. So your kind attention, please.
Ananda nigen skoten en swatan sios kain kwaiko owado ne engoi wakanto sungwaya diso sungwa igano henyo ne eza scano bueno tenyo Nidine and wehe iha ska and waya ongwa nigoha ska and wada no henyo ne toganio to ongwa nigoha dane and watrowi wenzare nenge yogwasira getchogwa Duano hot and one home quap. Ganio to on what nigoha. Dane and watrowi. Then grohnyo. Nigani one sa. Awayananda sahawenzada. Ningaki getto hoyan tuan. Hadeo wengrage. Nitogani to ongwa nigoha. Dane and watrowi. Nigaha wahyani onta. Nigango wadigowana. Ne jisondak. Ne anukwacha eagadosha. Ne one aze enjagona. Togani oto ongwa nigoha. Dane and watrowi. Todonyanyo. Onda endonyo. Ne adincha ode hadoni. Nitoge wadigo wane. Ne watak. Nitogani oto ongwa nigoha. Dane and watrowi. Hinyo gadidak senogit. Ne gadigenongit. Gwadi gowane. Ne de wahondes. Ne awehe goa. Ne togani oto ongwa nigoha. Dane and watrowi. Gana chaini gyon heko. Ne togani and watrowi. Uneganos hawe o enganyat anyo. Engane gowanesik. Engi hedenyo ne enyo no wando. Nitogani Ongwanikoha Dane and Watrowi Kadana Chini Gyon Heko Nikan Nundio Shani Osto Niskano Dueno Tenyo Ganio To Ongwanikoha Dane and Watrowi that day when ye Nikudugan Sahoe Wada Doni Oda Ohadiasto Nitogani Oto Ongwanigoha Dane and Watrowi Hagawayananda Sahoenzada Oi wagwe go hode wayanoni hoi wakasongwa hodai hadonyo touch negate sa Hawaiian and his nit get to hoi hode ga kwanta ne kwa hadi wenoda get enti so yetino honkwa Netogani to ungwa nigoha Dane and Watrowi Dikaka Kwageto Scat to go what said watcha then said wano honkwa we oh to sa o wenzade ne kwachi get e aquara one ha goya da gosta ne to e hot I had ho sa o wenzare ne to gani o to ongwa ni goha dane and watrobi so heka eni dage senti so yetino honkwa ne ona ne raunyo sa hodan sa goi ho ne kawe o ni do tak e agore ne dasto sani agora sto honge goya da gosta ne to gani o to ongwa ni goha Dane and Watrowi on the Sondasha Sengal Yadage ne hane and Tiso de Yetino Hunkwa Hane to guess a hoda Sakoi ho to Gani Oto Ungwa Nigoha Dane and Watrowi Yanda Sahoda Tuayania Sungwaya Diso Sakayanda Kaiwane Aksha Nanto Owenzade Nikane Kudoga Sahoe Nigoha is it designed one twat now Sakwayan or handle Hachiday Nyonge Nika ne wado so wagwana skanya dayo ne touchwaza ne so ne eso niko hiyo tata wenzare ngwaya diso ni togani oto ngwa nigoha dane and watrowi geni ongwadage hadiokya kyono teokie yeno skeno dueno tenyo ne chine ni kwage ne kwego kai hwai ko hodira kwai so ne togani oto onga ni goha dane and watrowi how hage gao yade hanage songwaya diso ne Nonya ne to sato ne scano I do not tenyo ne togani oto ungwa ni goha dane ton higa kweni ige agaye kenta kano hanyo dane to
That was incredible. That was a tremendous Thanksgiving, and I'm so moved. I hope you're moved as well. Now, I'm just so honored to introduce my Nehiyaw brother, National Chief Perry Belgard, who is from the Little Bear First Nation in Treaty 4 territory. He's served as Tribal Council representative for the Touchwood File Hills Capel Tribal Council, Chief of the Federation of Saskatchewan Indian Nations, and Saskatchewan Regional Chief for the Assembly of First Nations, as well as Chief and Councillor for the Little Black Bear First Nation. In 2014, the Chiefs and Assembly first elected Perry as National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations. He was re-elected to that position in July of 2018. National Chief Bellegarde has been recognized numerous times as a First Nations leader. And this morning, when I was reviewing this bio, he didn't want all of those recognitions announced, but there are many of them. National Chief Bellegarde remains grateful for the strength and vision he has gained from the elders. He vows to always place great importance on respecting their teachings. Their guidance has made him a man of foresight and a leader for generations. And I'm so honored to introduce him to you. Chief Bellegarde.
Thank you. Thank you, Trina. Mista kakea no tempe. Oh, is this on? Can you hear? No, it's not on. I'm just going to yell. No. Mista, thank you, Trina, for that invitation and to be here, but the introduction as well. Mista papikske nehea na psisi ninaskamon. I'm happy to be here. Kinanaskom tinoa kakea no temtik. To all my relatives, greet you all. Nista kuskateo muskasis skunogin utsinia. I'm from a small reserve called Little Black Bear, back home in Treaty 4 territory. Ogimao piesu oase sega. So one of the names I carry is King Thunderbird Child. So I greet you all. Today, anotainan cemento kanaskumtin to give thanks to the Creator for this day. I want to acknowledge the Creator for this wonderful, beautiful day and that beautiful rain that came down. Sitting on the side over here and listening to these young people, that was so amazing. Just listening, speak their language. That was so powerful. I want to acknowledge that again. To acknowledge the different nations and tribes here as well, the Mississaugas, Mississaugas when you credit how you say it, the Six Nations of the Grand, all of the tribes. In Canada, we say we're Indigenous peoples, we're First Nations peoples. In this state called Canada, this nation state, there's 634 First Nations across Canada. 634. Over 65 different nations and tribes in terms of languages. Many different nations and tribes. Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, Pasquamawari, Mohawk, Onondaga, Cayuga, Dene, Cree, Blackfoot, Northern Shoshone, Southern, there's 65. And we say we're First Nations people are Indigenous peoples. And so this morning it is my task to welcome you all to Canada. And those tribes we say, or those nations we say, were about 4% or 4.5% of Canada's population, about 1 million people, First Nations people across this land. But we don't say we're an ethnic minority. We're Indigenous peoples. And we have those 5 elements that are so important for that right to self-determination to be recognized. We have our own languages, our own lands, our own laws, our own peoples, and our own identifiable forms of government. 5 elements, very important. And that language is so fundamental to our identity. That right to self-determination. And we have rights, inherent rights, Aboriginal rights, treaty rights. But we also have responsibilities. Responsibilities given to us by the Creator to look after the land and water. Very important task to us. And in this country called Canada, in the Munia way, our relatives' way, that white man way, there's common law, they say, and there's civil law in this country. 2 laws. But there's also a third law, very important law that must be recognized. Creator's law, natural law, First Nations law, if you will. And there has to be space in this great land for those laws to be recognized, because, my friends and relatives, I'm going to close with our worldview as First Nations peoples. And this gathering here is so important, this Parliament of World's Religions. Parliament of World's Religions. Thousands of people from around the world, spiritual people, spiritual leaders, people that pray, people of spirit. And to acknowledge these people, these names, I don't know these people, but I'm going to say their names to acknowledge them. This man, Rob Sellers and Larry Greenfield, they're from that side over there in that state side. We never created borders as First Nations people, but the chair of the Board of Trustees, Rob Sellers, the executive director, Larry Greenfield. And then there's 2 important people here on this side in this territory called Toronto, now Canada, Karen Hamilton and Zol Kasamali, the co-chairs. Because it's hard to bring Indigenous people's worldviews into some of these institutions' mainstream places. So I acknowledge those 4 people. But as well, Mr. Bob Goulet and Diane Longboat for really pushing for what's happening today. And so I want to lift them up and say, Nyongoa. And Bob said early on he's a Anishinaabe. I say, Bob, you're not too shabby for Anishinaabe. So I lift them all up in a good way to thank them. And so the work here now, the work of you all here, and the work of the people that aren't here, is something, again, this worldview, and how we're all connected, because in our teachings, in our ways, we say sometimes we don't see color. And these little ones here acknowledged, as best I could understand the language they're saying, that thank you and acknowledgement, prayer or acknowledgement, that we give acknowledgement and thanks, of course, to the Creator. How you know that one, the great mystery. But we also acknowledge the ones that sit in the east and the south and the west, the north. We give thanks and acknowledgement to the ones that have their jobs there. We also give acknowledgement and thanks to Mother Earth, where all good things come from, our mother. We also give thanks to Father Sky and Grandmother Moon, Grandfather Sun, our relatives, the star people. We give thanks for the male plants, the female plants. You need both for life. And we give thanks to our relatives, the 4-legged ones. We give thanks to the ones that fly, the ones that swim, the ones that crawl. We also acknowledge four very special grandmother spirits. Very special and very important. The ones that look after the rainwater, the fresh water, the salt water, and the power when life comes, water breaks. So we acknowledge that. And so when we come together as the 2-leggeds, that's why we say we see no color sometimes. We're the 2-leggeds. I don't care if you're black, white, yellow, pink, red, or purple. We're the 2-leggeds. And so we're part of that environment. We're part of that worldview. We're part of that family. And that's so important to recognize now in 2018, because there's a big challenge. There's a big global challenge we must work together to fix and correct. And that is climate change, and that's the greenhouse gas emissions that are coming, and the pollution to this world, to this land and water. And so we need everyone to put our energies and our thoughts and our minds and our prayers, how we can keep that family that I just described healthy for future generations. 7 generations, Otini, in the future, Otini, gone down that future road that we must put our hearts and minds together. And if we can use that worldview in everything we do, locally, regionally, nationally, internationally, we'll have something for those 7 generations down the road. And if we can put our 7 sacred teachings, truth and honesty, love, respect, courage, wisdom, humility, all those things will guide us. So, my friends, my relatives, nista kinanaskom tinawao kakia no temte kanwakumagnak, for listening to my words. Let's keep our minds and hearts together for those 7 generations o tinikan. Ego se, kinaskom tinawao.
Come with me this way. Thank you, National Chief.
Thank you very much, National Chief. It's our way as Indigenous people, especially when we know each other, to tease each other. As my brother Enzo Kit Perry tells me, that if we tease you, it means we love you. So National Chief Belgard, he's Cree, and we forgive him for that. I'm here to introduce you to a good man, and he is an important leader in the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. He is the Tadadaho of the Seneca Nation of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy Council. He's Sachem, of the Onondaga Nation. Excuse me, I don't want to misrepresent him. Sid Hill has become the Tadadaho in 2002. And he led a group of people from the Onondaga Nation to file papers in the United States federal court claiming ownership of over 10,000 square kilometers in upstate New York. Yeah. For those of you from the United States, that's 4,000 square miles. And we hope you someday catch up to the rest of us and start using the metric system. The ownership assertion of the Onondaga Nation included lands from the Thousand Islands through Syracuse and up to the border of Pennsylvania, so a great amount of territory. So to give us greetings today, please welcome from the Seneca Nation, Chief Sid Hill.
Swadahon si Yosek and Johka. The Gaivan Dahquat, the Kewanahquan, and Joka Guegi. I know, I want to Angestat, Unadagega. I'd just like to speak on behalf of all of the Haudenosaunee at this time. I know there's a lot in the audience here, and I want to give a special thanks to the 2 young kids that did the opening address here. It was just awesome to hear. And it's really encouraging. Our youth are saving the language. I always get choked up when I talk about the language. My mother and father both spoke the language. Both went to boarding schools and came back and would not use the language with me. So, yet expected us to carry on the traditions. So it's kind of a hard thing to understand what our parents, grandparents went through in some of these boarding schools. But with a lot of energy from our youth and all the energy that they put out there and encourage other people that we can save our languages out there. And I know it's going across Canada and U.S. and all over. But it was really good to hear the 2 young people speak one of the languages of the Haudenosaunee. Again, I'm not Seneca, I'm Onondaga. No offense to one of the Senecas. But yeah, I really appreciate the time to come up here and learn, meet other people from across Canada, United States, South America, all over. A lot of relations out there, and we need to come together. And so, you know, our mandate as leaders is to make sure that all that we have is still there for the next generations. And it's been quite a battle. I don't know how our leaders, our parents, and grandparents kept it going through what they had to experience. You know, we're talking today. We're talking about laws and regulations and borders, climate, climate issues. They were fighting for their lives. So I think if they can get through that and all their trials and what they had to do, they had to move, they had to go to other places that they weren't familiar with, and that was walking to these places. And a lot of people passed on the way. So you're sent to another land and expected to survive, and they did. They adapted, and that's one thing when people are under stress like that, they do adapt. Any ethnic group adapts to whatever's put upon them, and that's what makes the I think the human species so durable. So, but being moved and adapting to things, it took its toll on our people, on our numbers and our populations, our connections. Haudenosaunee are spread all over, as far as Oklahoma. We just went and visited up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, up here, having to cross these imposed borders, asking us who we are, where do you come from? And you tell them Turtle Island, and they say, where's that? It's right here. This line is for you, not me, not our people. We travel back and forth, and I always like to say our brother likes to draw lines. It's pretty amazing because he can even draw a line in the waters. You see it on the map. That's pretty amazing. But you can't tell the fish, you can't tell the animals, the birds. You can't tell them that. And you can't tell the Onguihome, the real people. We'll keep this struggle. We have to support each other. We have to. We have to stop fighting amongst ourselves. And we all know how that goes. You get back home, people disagree, but you have to come to terms with one another and see what that goal is. What is that goal for our children? And that's what's most important. We talk about the language, very important. We keep our language, our culture, our ways, our dances, our songs. That's who we are. I don't need a paper to say that. But when we're put into this situation where we have to put aside our ways and our beliefs to satisfy someone else's, it's a lot of stress on our people every day. We have people, I'm sure there's people here who have relatives on both sides of the border, and it becomes a hassle to just go and visit sometimes, do ceremonies. But we do have to keep the struggle, because there's always a struggle. Whether it's in your daily life, just getting food on the table, or it's sticking up for your nation and sticking up for those that can't speak, the animal world, plant world, the waters, the air. There's so many issues that we have to be concerned about. And we don't have time to dispute amongst each other. just on when we were talking about on the earlier part, I thank the young children for using the language. There was an old one of the elders, and he didn't speak too much English. But what he said was, and it was kind of a joke. Like he said, if I speak my language, he says, you won't understand. And he says, if I speak your language, he says, I won't understand. So it's also a running joke about using the language. But we're here because of our elders and their struggle, their strength, and believing in who they are, no matter what the circumstances are. So it's really good to see and meet more people from other lands. And really appreciate having this time. Now,
I had to say thank you in my own way. Chief Hill, thank you so much. Kiranasko mitanan. You make our hearts happy and full so much. Now I'd like to introduce an amazing woman who I just met. Margaret was an expert member on the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. She's the director, Indigenous Women Environmental Conservation Project, chairperson for Civil Society for Indigenous Organization in Karamanja, Indigenous Women and Girls Leadership and Well-Being in Uganda. Margaret has been a teacher and social worker for 15 years. She has her master's in human rights and development, a degree in conflict resolution, a teacher's diploma, along with numerous certificates in the field of Indigenous peoples. Ladies and gentlemen, Margaret Lakawa.
As I've already been introduced, my name's Margaret Lokawa. I appreciate and I'm humbled to be here at the invitation of the Seventh Generation Fund, at Parliament of World Religions. Ladies and gentlemen, Mata, greetings from my elders. They send you love and greetings on the other side of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, in my presentation, I first wanted us to understand whom we are as Indigenous peoples. The term Indigenous peoples comprises of 500 million people spread across the countries and the whole world. It's a term used to categorize a population who inhabited a country or a region prior to colonization and other settlers. Ladies and gentlemen, given the diversity of Indigenous peoples, the notion of universal definition becomes unnecessary and undesirable. Instead, establishing certain criteria to identify and recognize them wherever they are located was considered to be imperative. This is according to ILO 169, for most of us who are familiar. And we also say they descend from populations who inhabited a country or a geographical region at the time of conquest, colonization, or establishment of current state boundaries. Indigenous people retain some or all of their own social, economic, cultural, and political institutions, irrespective of their legal status. They have social, cultural, economic conditions that distinguish them from other sections of the community. We have indigenous peoples in the whole world, and for my case, I represent indigenous people called Karamojong in the northern eastern part of Uganda. Ladies and gentlemen, in practice, the human rights of indigenous peoples remain without specifically designated safeguards. Indigenous people continue to face serious threats to their basic existence due to systematic government policies that discriminate them. In many countries, they rank highest on the scale of underdevelopment indicators. The proportion of people are in jail, illiteracy rates, unemployment, among others. They face discrimination in schools and are exploited in the workplace. In many countries, they are not even allowed to study in their own languages. And so this is a very serious challenge. Now we've got the instruments that recognize indigenous peoples. I just wanted to mention a few. We have got the Declaration on Human Rights, that was of 1948. We have got the ILO Convention 169, and then we have got the famous instrument, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Brothers and sisters, I would want to say something about women in particular. Indigenous women around the world suffer the same human rights abuses that perpetrate against indigenous men, including forced relocation from their ancestral lands, pollution and destruction of waters and territories, and limitation to education and health care, among others. And so, indigenous women suffer multiple human rights discrimination than men. Now, like any other nation, we have got instruments. We have got legal frameworks that protect indigenous people. We have got, in some countries, and in some countries, indigenous people are not recognized. We have the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights on Indigenous Peoples that I've just mentioned, and I want to highlight Article 22, which states that particular attention should be paid to the rights and special needs of indigenous elders, women, youth, children, and persons with disabilities. And then we have got Article 3, which provides the right to self-determination for indigenous people. And we say self-determination is defined as both a choice to determine political status, as well as the right to have autonomy over economic, social, and cultural developments. Self-determination is a right in itself and has been conceptualized as a condition of the fulfillment of other rights. In summary, the Declaration is an international human rights instrument considered the most significant accomplishment in the protection of people's rights, and in its 46 articles. For the purpose of recitation, the Declaration outlines a basic framework for recognizing the human rights of indigenous peoples in the key areas such as self-determination, language, culture, identity, education, territories, resources, among others. Ladies and gentlemen, I want now to go to the revitalization of indigenous women in Uganda and also other states. Now, for example, household food security is a big role played by women to ensure that their communities have enough foods. Indigenous women are often responsible to their families, and more than men who, in most cases, move away to towns. Another one is poverty alleviation. Given this scenario, women, in most cases, are introduced to initiatives that support them in their own various communities. But at times, these conditions are given with the preconditions that do not take care into account, that are not sensitive to indigenous women. Another one I would cite is promotion of reproductive health and sexual rights to indigenous women. In this case, first of all, indigenous women experience high levels of maternal and infant mortality, malnutrition, HIV/AIDS, and other infectious diseases such as malaria and tuberculosis. Children mortality rates among indigenous women is usually above the national average in most communities. Many of those poor health outcomes are influenced by formidable risks such as drug abuse, poor nutrition, alcoholism, which have worryingly increased within indigenous communities. And so you find that because of this, sometimes it is very hard for indigenous women who are family caregivers to provide all the basic needs, such as funds to take their kids to get treatment. It's really a challenge. Ladies and gentlemen, there are so many things that we can look at in revitalization of indigenous knowledge by women in their communities. Another one can be secure to land rights. Such land rights also help indigenous persons to continue their vital role in climate change adaptation and mitigation. Recognizing an entire community's right to its ancestral territories is more effective than recognizing rights for individuals, as the latter makes it easier for predatory industries and governments to steal land of these indigenous peoples in small pieces, so sometimes to have a collective voice could be better. We have food production. Indigenous peoples globally are actively shaping, nurturing, and fostering healthy and sustainable communities through their self-determination efforts and decolonization strategies. A critical area in this regard is food. Food sovereignty movements initiated, for example, in 1996 by transnational organizations of peasants, La Via Campesina, representing 148 organizations from 69 countries, called for the rights of people to healthy and culturally appropriate food for them to determine. This movement calls for indigenizing food, moving it beyond the right-based discourse. And this is one of the examples. This is one of the ways women can revitalize their indigenous communities. Climate change mitigation. In most cases, women encourage the planting of indigenous trees. Such organizations like mine that I have in my community, we have more than 200 women. And one of the issues we look at is environmental issues. And so we plant trees because we know we are attached to trees in so many ways. We worship, they keep our sacred places, we get medicinal foods, we get medicinal plants, and so forth. And so by protecting the environment, I think it's a very good step that indigenous women can hold, can revitalize their communities. Conflict resolution and peace building is another key area that indigenous women play a role. Women organizations and others support women in the case of conflicts over land and natural resources, which remain a defining factor for many lives of indigenous peoples. And by this, it promotes coexistence, which is very important, and women have been so much good at that. Another one is education. We realize that if indigenous women do not emphasize indigenous education, use of languages, then the societies are going to die. And I think that is one of the very important areas that women can use to revitalize the language, and the women should encourage the use of local languages in the formation of curriculums, because sometimes the second language that was imported to indigenous peoples do not even define certain animals. They do not define certain plants. And it's very hard for a child to relate in an indigenous language the attachment of a certain kind of species. I know very well, we know it better. There are some plants that an English word or a foreign word cannot explain. And in such, it is important for us, indigenous women, to emphasize the use of our own languages in schools. Other indigenous people are doing that, others are not. Use of modern technology to preserve ancient culture. Women have also promoted the use of technology among indigenous women, using modern technology, for example, to preserve ancient cultures that have been destroyed. And we have so many examples. And it is one of the things that we should revive. It is one of the things that identifies whom we are, and that is why in the first beginning of my introduction, I emphasized, I re-echoed what we already know, that you should know your identity. You should know where you are coming from so that you can move forward and make the future. The other one is safeguarding the intangible cultural heritage of indigenous peoples. Women are actively involved in efforts towards safeguarding. Most communities, I think, do that. The intangible cultural heritage of the indigenous communities at various levels, including decision-making at policy level and management. In 2003, states endorsed unintentional instruments to provide for safeguarding intangible cultural heritage of humanity across the globe. There have been efforts worldwide to increase the participation of women in this discord. I think this is very important because we must be involved as an indigenous woman. We must be involved in preserving our cultural heritage. We must be involved to take decision. We must be involved to speak for what is right. I think that is a very powerful message for us women and indigenous communities. We have so many examples. I have a case of a cultural heritage in my own country of a tribe called the Basongora, who had a long history. And from that community was one of the great rulers of the Bunyoro Kitara around 1700s. So you can see some of, even in other communities, maybe we have forgotten this. But we need to know our history. And it is the history that shapes us as indigenous peoples. It is the history that determines our destiny. Because if you don't know your history, then you are nobody. And as indigenous women, it is a high time we looked at those areas. Therefore, there should be measures to safeguard, preserve oral traditions. But this should be sensitive, gender sensitive, responsive, and women should be involved at all levels, as I've already mentioned. Oral traditions should be sufficiently reclaimed through research and documentation, and its knowledge made available and accessible for education, information, adaptation to development strategies. Feminist research methods should be used to bring out the perspective of women, and women researchers should be encouraged to do so. You know, I feel proud if a report of a woman, if a research made by Indigenous women is read such a gathering. It will be so great. And it makes us feel proud as Indigenous women. In conclusion, women play a very critical role in revitalization of Indigenous knowledge in our communities. These roles, as I've already mentioned, range from poverty alleviation, traditional knowledge, spirituality, environmental knowledge, health issues, and many others. If we embark this as Indigenous women with the support of our brothers, I think we can change. We shall remain united. With this, ladies and gentlemen, I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. That was incredible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Margaret. I met Margaret at the United Nations Permanent Forum this past fall in New York City, and established a bit of a friendship with her. So I really got to know her, and really happy that she's here. Quite a journey to come from where she comes from in Africa. She has to not only travel from her home community to the nearest port where she can get to another country to actually come here. She actually has to get a visa from that country to make the travel here. So it's quite an effort. And then she texted me from Amsterdam the day before, just a bit worried about how she's going to get from the airport to her hotel. So another big hand for Margaret. It is my pleasure to introduce you to a very important leader, a very wise and extremely respectable knowledge holder. Jim Dumont, his Anishinaabe name is Onondaga, and that's he who walks above the ground. He's Ojibwe Anishinaabe from the Wabjeshi clan, which is the Martin clan, the clan that adopts people, the clan that is also our people that serve as our Ogichida, the warriors in our communities. He's a 5th degree member of the Three Fires Midewan Lodge. Midewan is the way of the heart. And he's originally from Shawnaga First Nation on eastern Georgian Bay in the Great Lakes. That's what the paper says. But I'm going to go a bit off script for a bit and talk a bit about the significance of Onondaga and what he means to so many of us. Onondaga practices what we call, as I mentioned, the Midewan way. It's our original spiritual way of the Anishinaabe people. It is our original traditional society, the protectors of our knowledge, the keepers of our songs, our stories, our history. All of the life of the Anishinaabe goes around that lodge that we call Midewiganing. If you want to see that lodge, there's a replica of it that we're using on the 8th level here called the Lodge of Nations, and I want to welcome you all there. Jim, as we know him, started in that lodge as a young man. We see Jim now as the white-haired elder that we grow to love and respect, but he started as a young man, as a young family man in our lodge 47 years ago. This way of life called the Midewan was lost to the world. It was kept hidden, and there are very few keepers of that. And he began to learn, he requested, he went after that information, he went after that way of life and asked for it. He was guided by the Spirit to find his way back to this life. And he studied, if that's not an appropriate word, he learned from our grand chief in our lodge. His name is Bodwewidan Benesi, and he's from where is he from? Lakota, Wisconsin. Bodwewidan is our grand chief, and he continues to be our most prominent teacher and speaker. But it was those young people that started our lodge again. It was folks like Jim Dumont, Edna Manitowabi, my uncle Nick Deliri, his wife Mary, so many other people that started off as young people, even before they had families. And it's thanks to people like Jim Dumont, Onondaga, that raised his children in this way of life. Now they're raising their children in this way of life, and they brought it back to our nation. For us, it can't be understated as Medewin and Anishinaabe, and for the Anishinaabe people of this territory, we can't give enough thanks to our leaders like Nabanase and like Bodwewidan Benesi. We are so thankful because I'm able to say that I'm raising my children in this way. I know my way, original way, as an Anishinaabe, and I'm so happy that the Spirit finds its way in this place because of the leadership of Onondaga. So a big round of applause, a big rousing welcome to Onondaga, Jim Dumont. You're still a young man.
Ojo. As you have already heard, Onondaga Nishinikas, Wabajeshi and Wodem. Nigani Yijik and I was also given the name Nigani Yijik, which means the leading sky. I am of the Martin clan, Shawanaga and Don Jaba. I originate from Shawanaga. And I was raised up as the chief in our lodge at the eastern doorway. In time, my hair has been white for a long time. But in time in the lodge, I was also raised up as Gitche Aya. That's a hard one to say, that you are Gitche Aya. Because that word, actually, the sense of that word is, it is in the word, a great being. That was the way that we referred to our elders, as great beings. Not just as an old man or an old woman, but somebody who in their life has learned everything about life and has lived that and is able to pass that on to the generations to come. But we're supposed to be a humble people, have humility. So to stand up and say, I am a great being, doesn't seem to be a step in the right direction. I want also to acknowledge those two young children. I think the way that they talk about those words that are spoken is that these are the words that are spoken before any other words are spoken. And when we do that, we acknowledge that without the Spirit we can't do this. So we call the attention of the Spirit to to be in every way with us as we conduct the ceremony, or as we do the teachings, or sing the songs, or carry on with the meetings that are being held. So what we witnessed this morning and what we were a part of is that these young children are the reason that the Spirit is with us today. There is this great concern about our language. Some of them are threatened with extinction. But being witness to what took place today, we can feel it's being taken care of. That we saw our future, and our future looked good and sounded good. As I was sitting there listening to people talking, these words went across my mind. Everyone has the right to feel good about who they are. And for us, all that we have been through since the coming of this other people to our island, this place given to us by the Creator, it's been a long time that we haven't felt that way. But everyone, and there is no exception to this, everyone has the right to feel good about who they are. I'm used to having enough time to say what I want to say. But I've only got half an hour, so I better get at it. We were given a way of life. It's not a religion, it's a way of life. In our way that we were given to understand that when it came time for the Creator to create a human being, He created him, He created her 4 ways, as the 4 colors of human life. That's our belief. Human life didn't originate in one part of the world and spread all over the earth. Human life began in 4 places on this earth. And if we still remembered where we came from, we could trace our way all the way back to the very first one who was lowered here to this earth in this part of the world. In this part of the world. So when human beings were created as the 4 colors of human life, the Creator gave each one of them a road, gave to each one a place on this earth to dwell, to live out their life according to the way they were given that life by the Creator. And so the Creator, having created each one from the earth, a different color, sent them out from his side in the four directions. The red color that we know as Neskogabawit, red color standing, was the only one who looked back. And that doesn't speak ill or unfavorably of the other colors. It just says that they were so taken by the life that the Creator gave them. They were so awed by that life that they left right away, and they were in a hurry to live out that life on the earth, to give expression to that life. But the red color didn't want to leave the Creator's side. He didn't want to leave, as he called him, his grandfather. He didn't want to leave his grandfather alone. And so he had to be persuaded to take the first step on that road that we today call the Red Road. The Creator persuaded him and urged him, and so he left the side of the Creator and began to walk on that road. But he stopped 4 times as he walked. Each time the Creator encouraged him to keep on going. And in our understanding of that 4th time that he turned around, the Creator said to him, from this place onward, you will not look back. And because he didn't look back, he created an opening through all of those levels, from the spirit level to the earth level. And those doorways are still open to us today when we go back home, when our life is finished here and we go back home to the Creator. But at that 4th place, he put a spirit there. And that's the spirit we call Mede Manedo, or where Medewin comes from. Medewid means to practice the sacred way, to practice the ceremony of the sacred way of life. Medewin, the Medewin way. Only to the red color was that spirit given. And Anishinaabe, as we call the human being, was the only one who was given immediate access to the Creator. If you stand on your spiritual tiptoes in this world, you can actually reach up to the Spirit and talk to the Spirit directly. And I'm sure that other colors of the world have their own story about how they are special to the Creator and how their journey to live out the sacred life on this earth was given to them. But for us, that's our story. The beginning of our story on this earth as human beings is a recognition that we are special to the Creator. Throughout the creation story, it is always said, the Creator, our grandfather, loved his red children. How we could ever lose that sense of being is hard to imagine. As it is now looking back, hard to imagine how great and powerful a people we must have been when from the very beginning of life we heard those stories of our creation, how the Creator made us as a people. when the Creator created the original man, original human being of the red color, in the same way as he had created all of the colors of the earth, he gathered up 4 parts of earth from the 4 directions of this island today we call the Turtle Island. And he mixed that earth together in his hands, and when he opened up his hands, that earth mixed together was the red color. And then he began to shape him in his today's appearance. And when he opened up his hands, there he stood, the red color. And that's where we hear the word Meskoga, the one who was the red color, standing in the Creator's hand. But he would not even begin to create the red color until he was satisfied in his mind that this was the most beautiful being the Creator could create. He wouldn't stop thinking about it until he was satisfied, yes, truly this is the most beautiful being. And then he opened up his hands, and there he stood. And he continued to refine the features of that earth being according to the image that he saw. And again, it says he wouldn't stop working on that vessel until he was satisfied, yes, truly this is the most beautiful being I can create. And when he was satisfied, then he filled the vessel. Just that image and just that story of the creation of the red color of human life. That's what we have a right to. We have a right to believe that we are in the Creator's eyes, in the eyes of our grandfather, the most beautiful being he could make from this earth, placed upon the earth. And in the same way, when he created this earth, long before he created Anishinaabe, he made this place to be the most beautiful place. He created this world because he wanted a place to send his thoughts to. In the darkness, all he had was his thought. And he sent his thoughts out into the forever darkness. But there was nothing for his thoughts to bounce back from. And so he thought about his thought. He thought about all of the thoughts that followed from those thoughts. That there was nowhere out there for his thoughts to bounce back from. So he thought to himself, I will have to create a place. I'll have to create a place to send my thoughts to. Long after the creation of the universe and all of the planets and all of the stars that are out there, he determined to create that place. But that's when he first thought of it, was in the darkness, in the beginning, before the beginning. He wanted a place to send his thoughts to. And so when he had created this earth and said the birds carried the seeds and dropped them everywhere upon the earth, the Creator smiled. When those seeds, having been dropped to the earth, sprouted from they germinated into the earth, spread their roots, and pushed pushed the shoots through the soil, and they began to leaf and then to bloom. When the Creator witnessed that, it said he started to cry. He started to cry because for the first time he saw what his thoughts looked like. Our mother said our mother was so beautiful when she was young. And the dress that she wore was the most beautiful dress. All of the flowers, all of the berries, all of the foods, all of the plants and medicines of life came into bloom. And that's what made the Creator cry. He cried tears of joy at how beautiful his thoughts were as they became actualized in this world. And so we know of all the other reasons why the earth was created. That was one of the primary reasons why. To create a place to send his thoughts to. So when it came time to create Anishinaabe, the human being, in the same way he imaged how beautiful he would look, and he created him according to that image. And then it said he filled the vessel. The Creator's thoughts, when he sent them out into the darkness of the universe, wherever they touched on the darkness, they left an imprint in the form of a star. And so the star world is thus created by the thoughts of the Creator. As many as the stars in the universe are the thoughts in the Creator's mind. Of those thoughts, he filled the vessel. From his own thoughts, he filled the vessel of this one who is the red color of human life. And what that tells us is that for us, as the original people of this part of the world, there is no greater intelligence than indigenous intelligence. And I wonder again, how could we ever have forgotten that? How could we ever traded our way for a way that questioned the validity and sacredness and the awesome truth of our knowledge about the life that was given to us? We have the right to feel good about who we are. Our creation story verifies that. That's the way the Creator regarded us and still regards us. He filled the whole vessel with his thoughts. That's indigenous intelligence. That's the intelligence that we were given. And it was throughout our whole being, not just in our brain, not just in our head. Our intelligence is throughout our whole being. Our mind is throughout our whole being. And then he touched that first being at the center of the vessel. And when he did, he caused his heart to beat in time with the heartbeat of the Creator of life. There is an energy by which everything is created. Everything began in the darkness when there was nothing yet created. But the Creator wanted there to be life. So the Creator's intention in creating And throughout all of our knowledge about this life that we have, it always validates life. The Spirit doesn't know how to negate life. The Spirit doesn't know how it can be that there is not life. That's the way of the Spirit. And that energy is what in English we call love. That energy of caring and kindness. This desire to live life is what we were given. This desire is, if you understand emotion spiritually, it's this emotional drive that we have to live this life in its finest expression of being. Anishinaabe, that's how he was created to be. That's how she was made to be. The Creator wanted to provide a way for a spirit to be able to actually live in this world. Spirit is a spirit, and unless the spirit is vested within a physical vessel of this world, the spirit can't live here. And so the Creator created a human being. When he had filled that vessel with all of his thoughts and the rhythm of his heartbeat, then he breathed into him the breath of life. And when he breathed into him the breath of life, there was transferred from the all-spirit to the vessel, the individual spirit of who each one of us is. That's the way we were created to be. We are a spark of the spirit of the all-spirit, the great spirit. And in our way of thinking and in our way of knowing, the Creator would never destroy that which is of himself. So we have no concept of where people would be damned forever, or a place like hell where people would be committed to. Spirit is forever. We are charged almost as a responsibility to find the best way to pursue our lives so that the Spirit can express herself in the world in which we live. We were given everything that we would need. When it was time to create Anishinaabe, the red color of human life, as a spirit, Anishinaabe was called into the presence of the Creator and all of those of the spirit realm and all of those of the spirits of the animals and of the trees were all there. And that's the time of, it's called the great first instructions of life. When those instructions were given, he was told by the Creator, I have finished what I set out to do. I have given you everything that you will ever need. The road I have given you is long. You have a time to live on this earth, and the time I have given you is long enough to experience the great beauty and joy of this life, and to do in this life what I might ask you to do. I have left nothing out. The Creator never made a mistake when he created us. It was the intention of the Creator to create us in that way, His red children. And He gave us every means of body, mind, heart, and soul to do in this life what the Creator desired for us to do. And so our first intention in this life is to find that beauty in the life that He gave to us. In the spirit realm, you can't touch life in its physical manifest form. You can't hear the birds singing in the morning. You can't taste the taste of the first strawberry of life to know what it tastes like. You have to do that physically in order to feel it spiritually. And that's why the Creator created the earth in the way that He did. And that's why He created us in the way that He created us. So that when we reach out with our fingertips to touch the world, the Spirit can feel what the world feels like. This earth is said to be the only place where the Spirit can touch life directly. So when you reach out and pick that first strawberry in the spring, and you put that to your lips, and you begin to taste the taste of that first berry, say there's no taste greater than that taste of the first berry of life. Even little children just rub that on their lips and they can taste that strawberry. They have this look of delight on their face, the joy of that experience. The only place you can find that is in this world. Nowhere else in the universe can you find that. And I'm safe in saying that because I know we're not going to get out of our solar system, except on Star Trek or something. And there might indeed, and probably is, other beings out there. But there is no one like Anishinaabe on this earth. There is no one like the human beings on this earth. This is the only place where you can touch life directly. So when that child experiences the taste of that strawberry, magnify that 1,000 times, and you'll have a bit of an idea how the Spirit feels. Oh, so that's what life tastes like. Life tastes so sweet. That's the experience of the Spirit. When a mother holds a baby in her arms for the first time after giving birth, what we are told, and as men we have to take it for granted that it's true, because we can't give birth to life. And we can never know fully what that experience is like. But the way it was told to me by grandfathers and grandmothers is that there is no feeling greater than that feeling. To feel when that child is brought to you and is on your left side, flesh to flesh, and you feel the warmth of that new being in the world. There is no greater feeling than that. And if you multiply that 1,000 times, How does the spirit feel? Oh, that's how brand new, fresh, new life feels like. I've always wanted to know what life feels like. And now I feel it as I cradle that life in my arms. So this world that we live in, that's the kind of life the Creator gave us to live. And He gave us the means to experience that. We, each one of us, according to our understanding, personally I can say, I am a spirit who is walking through this world. I am a spirit who is experiencing life in this world. I have reached out and touched life, and I have touched life deeply. I have listened to the birds in the morning, and I have learned some of their songs. I have listened to what the animals are trying to say to us, and the trees and the medicines. And this life the Creator gave us is full. I imagine if I was conscious, I'd know my time must be coming to an end. But I lost my consciousness. So. So I'll finish with this. Last year, around this time, I was driving from down this southern Ontario up to Onondaga, which is around the central Georgian Bay area. And if you catch it at the right time in the fall, the leaves, the turning leaves and all the colors is the most magnificent in the whole world. At least that's the way I believe it about where I come from. And I was driving along, and I started to notice that it was so spectacular, the splendor of that time of the year. And I had this thought, the kind of thoughts that I'm beginning to have these days as I'm getting older. As I witnessed the beauty all around me as I was driving along. And it just so overwhelmed me. And I started to cry. And this whole big emotion rose up inside me and overflowed into tears. And it was tears of joy at how beautiful this world is. And along with that was the realization that probably in not too long a distance in time, I won't be able to see this anymore. I'll be a spirit, and I won't be able to touch this life. I won't be able to behold the beauty of those trees in full color in the fall. And so in the time that we have on this earth, appreciate the beauty of this world. This is the only place as a spirit that you can experience it. Take care of it. Take care of our relatives in this creation. Take care of the trees and the grass, the plants and the flowers. so that they will always have the promise that they were given of the fullness of life. And it is true, we have to speak for them. They have their own voices in communicating with one another. But human being is the only one that was given language. And we have to speak for them. They are without a voice in that way. We have to speak up for them. We have to believe in the beauty of this world. And as Indigenous people of this earth, we need to feel good about ourselves. And we need to look into the teachings that we have to find those ways that we can speak for this life. There may be people who are so into the synthetic creation of life around us that they have lost touch with life. They are motivated by other things that end up being destructive for the life all around us. And we have to appeal to their conscience, and we have to speak up for our relatives who are still doing what the Creator gave them to do. The motion I want to make I made this suggestion one time to a group of priests, Jesuit priests. And I don't know if they thought it was a good idea, but they never did anything about it. I think we have to tone down identifying ourselves as religions and as any kind of organized expression of religion or faith. There's something that's holding us back from an understanding there. I think we should create some kind of institute for the study of the Spirit. That's what I think. It's politically neutral. If you believe in the spirit of life, you can't ever think that your way is favored by the Creator over another. That God is somehow on your side, which means He's against everybody else. Being spiritual is being of the way of the Spirit. We were given a way to live in this world as the Spirit, touching this life and experiencing this life directly. That makes everything we do, from tasting a strawberry to smelling a flower or a braid of sweetgrass to hugging a tree or setting entrapped animals free. Everything that we do is spiritual. Taste the strawberry. It makes the spirit happy. So the very physical things of life, the material things of life that we can feel and enjoy, that's spiritual. There's nothing more spiritual than living your life on this earth in the most direct way. And in the most beautiful way, express yourself in your own life. Miigwech. Somebody take me off this stage.
After that, it's certainly hard to know exactly what to say. I think many of us were moved to tears. I know Bob and I have been crying together back there. That kind of gentle and loving way of teaching and sharing with us is so important. And I think, Ona Binese, he who walks above the ground, for sharing with us here today. So I think we should try to come together and create an institute for the study of the Spirit. Yes, I hope that way. Now, it's my honor to introduce another Nehiao brother from my territory, Grand Chief Wilton Littlechild. Dr. Wilton Littlechild is a Cree chief, a residential school survivor, and a lawyer who has worked both nationally and internationally, including with the United Nations, to advance Indigenous rights and treaties. He has also, through leadership with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, raised awareness of former Canadian policies that decimated the livelihood of culture of Indigenous Canadians. Chief Littlechild was a member of the 1977 Indigenous delegation to the UN and worked on the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. He organized within the UN to increase Indigenous input in the economic and social issues the UN tackles. In the 1980s, he worked on the lawsuit to prevent patriation of the Canadian Constitution until the Aboriginal treaty rights were protected, and in more recent years, he has been a regional and international chief on Treaties 6, my own, 7, and 8. In addition to his ongoing work with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, he's continued to run his own law firm in Ermineskin, Alberta, and maintains his commitment to sport. He has been inducted into 7 sports halls of fame. He has been awarded the Order of Canada in 1993. The Canadian government also awarded Chief Littlechild the Canada 125 Medal, and he is a 2015 laureate of the Inspire Awards and was recently honored with the Alberta Award of Excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, Chief Littlechild.
Thank you very much. Niganista kahkiokta tamska nao. Mio senoma. Nstaki goyotse mam skutamak. Ino mam tenetskan. Eksnaskama kahkio muta ka uiguhketsk. Iguhke miasek hanots. Eksimina teinen askomak nigan, mamo taimak se manto nista. I just bring you greetings in my language to acknowledge each and every one of you for your dedication in being here, and also to add my voice of thanks to all the previous speakers, and also to acknowledge the traditional owners of these territories. And of course, add my voice to thanking the children for the invocation. I'm going to sit down in a moment here because of an old nagging injury. But before I do, I wanted to thank a very special friend for the invitation to join you here today. Some time ago, I got a phone call from Diane Longboat, longtime friend of mine. And she said, "Willie, we're going to have a gathering in Toronto. We're inviting the whole world. It's a parliament of the world's religions, and we're going to talk about inclusion and the power of love and reconciliation. And we wanted to invite the brightest, handsome, most popular lawyer, Indian lawyer in Canada." So my heart was starting to pound, and she says, "But he couldn't make it." So we had to invite you. So, thank you, Diane. So I wanted to be serious and talk a little bit about what our sister earlier talked about, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and how it might be important for us to consider it in our discussions here. However, as a backdrop for some of our guests from other areas, I wanted to just recap a little bit about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that was just concluded, as you know, a couple of years ago. I think most of you, if not all of you, will remember that the Truth Commission of Canada was as a result of the largest class action lawsuits in Canadian legal history, where almost 18,000 lawsuits were launched by children, now adults, for their time in residential schools across Canada. But the judges, in their wisdom, decided maybe we should try and settle this out of court because of the numbers involved. So the plaintiffs, after many, many hours of discussion and negotiation, agreed to settle out of court on 4 conditions. One of those conditions was to establish a Truth Commission. Because as you know, when you go to court, you at least have an opportunity to present your side of the story. And when you settle out of court, you lose that opportunity, and they didn't want to lose that opportunity. Because this story has been couched as the darkest, saddest, most unknown chapter in Canadian history, the residential school story. So they felt, we don't want to lose that opportunity to tell our side of the story. So they literally demanded a Truth Commission. So a Truth Commission was established. The first 3 commissioners all resigned, and a second call was made. And I was asked if I would consider sitting on a commission, and of course I said no, I didn't. I was too busy, I was already working hard at home and so on, all these excuses. I didn't really realize why I didn't want to do it until the first public meeting we had. So to quickly recap the history, you'll remember that the courts ordered us to do 7 national events and also to have public and private hearings. So to start our new beginning of the Truth Commission, we asked Her Excellency Governor General Michael Jean at the time to host us at Rideau Hall so that we could launch officially the Truth Commission. And at that time, we also asked the survivors of this history, how should we go about our work? And in their wisdom, they told us, make sure that you have a safe setting before you ask someone to come and tell you their story. Because some people told us, I've been hiding this story for 50 years, 60 years. And they felt it was important to have a blanket of support around the individual, to have health supports, medical supports, emotional support. But I think the key to the success was when they told us, make sure there's cultural and spiritual support around that individual. So that was the first real significant contribution, I would say, of our spirituality into this work. So it was the survivors themselves who told us to do that, and I thank them very sincerely. As I said, we were ordered by the courts to have 7 national events to tell Canada about this history. Because when we started our work, the level of awareness for the commission, or not the commission, but the residential school history, was less than 5% of Canada knew anything about the residential schools. Some knew the term residential school, but didn't really know what happened in these schools. So we heard approximately 7,000 stories. And I have to tell you that these stories, in some cases, were the most horrific stories one can hear about what was done to children. The abuse, the physical abuse, the mental abuse, cultural abuse, spiritual abuse, and worst of all, sexual abuse. So we heard these stories and asked some if they would be willing to share their story so that Canada, and indeed the world, would know what happened in residential schools. Some said yes, others said no. It hurts me too much. I haven't even told my family my story. I haven't told my children. So please keep it private. But in the main, most people said yes, tell the world about this story. Another instruction from the elders, the survivors, was because there's 7 national events, maybe we should focus on the 7 sacred teachings as a theme for each of the gatherings. So the first one was about respect, the teaching of respect. And you know, when you look at these teachings, these sacred teachings, they're not only indigenous teachings, they're actually universal teachings. So respect and courage were the first 2, and I think, for me, when I think back a couple of years now, when we were in Halifax to talk about the theme being love, I think that's where we turned the corner in this country. Because many times we heard people say, I hate myself. I hate the skin that's brown. I hate being Indian. And I thought, when we were going to talk about love, this would be the most difficult hearings. But I'm so happy to be proven so wrong, because one brave soul came in front of us And she said, you know, I've been on a healing journey. And today, I can look myself in a mirror and say to myself, I love you. I couldn't do that before, she said. I couldn't even tell my spouse, my partner, I love you. Hardest of all, I couldn't even tell my children, my grandchildren, I love you. So when she said that, others started coming forward and talking about one of your discussion items here, the power of love. The power of love. Then there was reconciliation, and a friend of mine said, you know what, Willie, I've been working on reconciliation for 10 years now. And I said, way to go. His name was Ray. I said, way to go, Raymond. And he said, no, Willie. Today was the first time I realized that reconciliation begins with me. He said, it begins with me. And I thought, wow, that's a powerful message in and of itself. He went on to say that I need to reconcile with our Creator, the Great Spirit, or God, however you acknowledge our Creator. Then I can go and reconcile with my family. And when I've done that, then I can reconcile with my community and our neighbors next door. I'm always blessed, I say, because one of the next door neighbors for me where I live is a city that's often what I say the most mispronounced city in Canada. People call it Wetaskiwin. Anybody know where Wetaskiwin is? It's in Alberta. It's right by my reserve, but it's actually Wetaskiwin. Wetaskiwin. Wetaskiwin is a Cree word. It means having good relations. And that's what reconciliation is about. So we went on this journey. We asked people of outstanding stature in Canada to be honorary witnesses. Someone needs to carry this story on. And we asked people if they would be willing. Former prime ministers, governor generals, lieutenant governors, successful business people, athletes have come forward and said, we will carry the story on. So, early part of our work, we documented stories about how children were rounded up in September. They used to call September the crying month because people, that's what they remembered about September, was crying, children crying, because that's when they were taken from the parents. I remember one story of a couple of a brother and sister. They said how happy and excited they were. They're going to go on this plane ride. So their parents paddled over to this float plane. They were put on a float plane, and they flew to Ottawa. Never been to a city, so they overnighted there, got put on a train for 3 days to Edmonton. Edmonton, they were put on another plane to go north to Aklavik, Inuvik. So when they look back, they said, you know, that's 2,500 miles from home. I thought I was bad. I was only 3 miles from home. But the reason I tell you that story is because many children tried to run away from school. We heard many horrific stories of children drowning, trying to cross a river, freezing to death in a wintertime, trying to run away from home. So we write about how children were rounded up, sometimes in cattle trucks. They were put in trucks, trains. So we did a publication on they came for the children. We did an interim report to test how serious is Canada about reconciliation. So we made some preliminary calls to action. I should say we called them recommendations at the time. And then we documented these stories that we heard into a publication called The Survivors Speak. Because I remember being told, what makes you think you're going to believe me? I've told my story 5 times, 7 times. Nobody believes me. What makes you think you're going to believe me? So we did a publication in their own words about their story. So then when we were about to do our report, just coincidentally, there had been a study done on words that are used for reports, like conclusion, suggestion, recommendation, all these different words that are used. And there was actually a study done on what's the easiest word to ignore in the report. Recommendation. That's the easiest word. And we've had studies. I remember looking at the justice system here in Canada as a commissioner to look at how many studies have been done on a justice system, I asked myself. There had been 33. There had been over 3,000 recommendations, and we were still filling up the prisons. So we thought what we need is not more recommendations. We had the Royal Commission report, 400 and some recommendations. What we need now is action. And not too many calls to action. So we decided to use the term calls to action. And it's important now to reflect back on that and how important that little difference has made. We're not ordered by the court to report on the missing children, but we did because we kept hearing about children that never came home. As I said, there's a picture in my mind. It's etched in my mind of 4 little boys huddled together, frozen to death. So we wrote about the missing children. When we finished our work, it was 4,300 children. We identified how they died, where they died, where they're buried, because families didn't know that. They didn't know what happened to their relative. All they remember was he or she being taken away. I remember one woman in tears. She said, "Mr. Commissioner, all I remember about my daughter, my little girl, was I was hanging on to her, and RCMP took one arm, Indian agent took the other one. That's the last time I saw my little girl. Mr. Commissioner, you go find her." So now I'm told it's over 6,000. And it's important for us because in our way, as Elder Jim talked about our way, we have a wake when a person dies. We have prayers, songs. We have a feast. For 4 years, we have a feast every year on the day the person died. This could not be done by families who didn't know where their relative was buried. So we did that part of the report. But then we broke down our report into themes. We started, first of all, with education, because you've heard us say that it was education that got us into this mess. But it's also and more importantly, it's education that'll get us out of this mess. So the first part of our report is dedicated to that. Culture and language, and you heard about that already this morning, about the importance. You see, when we looked at the legacy of residential school, we found that 4 elements of our way were severely assaulted by the residential school policy. First of all, it was an assault on our families. It was an assault on our communities. It was an assault on our culture and our languages. And you heard a story this morning about how important language is. And we heard Elder Sid talk about how he wasn't taught the language because his parents went to residential school. Spirituality was attacked and assaulted because it was against the law, actually, to practice spirituality. But we write about that. And on health and justice, governance, and murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. We asked ourselves, what were the main teachings and lessons from these hearings, these 7,000 stories? What were the main lessons learned? And we looked at what we heard people saying. So we broke them down into 10 principles of reconciliation. And the first one is to use the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples as the framework for reconciliation. I remember when we were debating the UN Declaration, it's interesting, something happened one day and I was asked, can you go and talk to the chairperson? Because we want to open the meeting with a prayer. So I went to the chairperson and she said to me, Mr. Littlechild, you know we don't pray at the United Nations. And I said, well, it's not really a prayer, it's an invocation, it's a thanksgiving. And she said, well, how long is that going to take? You have 3 minutes, she said. So I was really happy. I went back to the elders. I said, we have 3 minutes to say an invocation. They said, we will sing a prayer song. So they came with 4 drums, 4 elders, spiritual leaders, and they're singing a prayer song. And she poked me on the elbow, says, Mr. Littlechild, it's already 7 minutes. How long are they going to take? And she says, I don't know, we can't stop the elders. You have to keep them going. But you know what happened out of that? The UN usually works with 5 bundles of rights: economic, social, cultural rights, civil and political rights. From that day on, now, at the UN, every meeting starts with a prayer. And that was a contribution by our elders, because they were brave enough, strong enough, resilient enough to come and break the ice at the UN with a prayer song. And that's a benefit for everyone around the world, because you know what happened? There's a 6th bundle of rights now: economic, social, cultural, civil, political, and guess what? There's now spiritual rights recognized. And that's thanks to the elders for changing the world in that way. So spirituality is really important. And I think that if you look at the UN Declaration, you will see that there are specific references to spirituality. In fact, there's one that calls for action to you, all of you in this room. Because it says all faith groups or social justice groups should endorse the UN Declaration and implement the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So not only is spiritual rights recognized now at the UN Declaration, there's a call to action for us to make sure that spirituality is implemented. It's right in the UN Declaration. There are other references like spiritual connection to lands, territories, and resources, being able to teach spirituality, religion, practices, and traditions and ceremonies to children. Those are all in the UN Declaration. But when you look at the calls to action, there are 16 calls to action on the UN Declaration. For example, all the law schools from now on, all the medical schools, the nursing schools, the journalism schools, the media schools, now have to teach not only the residential school history and the legacy, but treaties and the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So when we talk about the power of love, or when we talk about reconciliation being having good relations, when we talk about calls to action to make sure that we implement the UN Declaration, I think that's a call to all of us to consider this globally. Consider it globally, the Declaration as a framework for reconciliation. I close with my school. This was a school that was the largest residential school in Canada at one time. And you'll see there's the center of the building on the 4th floor is where the nuns used to live. The floor below that, and I sometimes get challenged by people when I say that was the girls' dorm. They say, how do you know that? Well, I had 7 sisters actually at that school, and that's where they lived. The floor below that is the classroom block, and then the dining hall below that. The building in the middle is the boys' dorm. There's big boys, medium boys, and little boys. And then there's a potato patch, a black, on the right-hand corner there's a potato patch. Had a lot of potato fights there. But you'll see in the back there's a horse barn, there's a cow barn, there's a chicken coop. It's actually a very self-sufficient. If you were to do this today, you'd get charged for child labor. But anyway, that was my school. It's the same picture, but a different angle, and I'm sorry you can't really see it. But in front of this, there's a fence. People say, I'll get over it. So what, the fence? Well, it's a barbed wire fence, and they say, well, so what? But actually, that was an electric fence. That's in front of that school. You can see the fence, I think, from there. So I think we have an opportunity now to really expand our horizons and use the Declaration, use reconciliation, use the power of love, use inclusion, all those thematic discussions you're having here today, so that we can have good relations among all of us going forward. And I thank you very, very much for this opportunity. Hai, hai.
That was wonderful. Come, we'll go this.
A big thank you to Grand Chief Wilton Littlechild. Wilton, Marie Wilson, and the chief, he's currently a senator in our Senate of Canada. That's Murray Sinclair, served as the commissioners of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. They did a wonderful job and important work that's going to be lasting for a long, long time. I also have to a shout out to my uncle Murray Sinclair, the Honorable Murray Sinclair, the senator. He's also the western doorway of chief of our Three Fires Medewan Lodge. So nice to acknowledge my uncle Murray, who's not able to be here. I want to introduce you to the moderator of our next panel. This panel is about the role of women in revitalizing Indigenous communities. Tia Oros Wilson is the Executive Director of the 7th Generation Fund for Indigenous Peoples, an organization founded in 1977 that supports community-generated strategies for Native peoples' cultural revitalization, movement building, self-determination, and re-indigenization. Ms. Oros Wilson has extensive experience in international advocacy, including expertise in the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. She's also a convener and one of the founding mothers of the Global Indigenous Women's Caucus and of the World Indigenous Women's Alliance. She's a mother, a grandmother, a cultural artist, a social and cultural justice organizer, a water protector, and an advocate for the rights of Mother Earth. To moderate this panel and to welcome our panelists, please welcome Tia Oros Peters.
Kashi, Kotonomatokia. Good morning, brothers and sisters of the world, everyone here. Thank you to the Indigenous peoples of this area for their welcoming of us and of this conference onto their homelands, and for beginning this event, for centering it with the sacred fire, honoring Mother Earth, and recognizing the ancestors, ancient and everlasting, who are always with us and who will guide our conversations and actions over these next days together. I would like to also acknowledge the chiefs and the clan mothers, the wisdom keepers, the sacred bundle holders, the sundancers, kiva leaders, the leaders of medicine societies, of songs and of ceremonies, peoples of world renewal ceremony. Brothers and sisters of the world, my name is Tia Oros Peters. I'm Shiwi. My people are also known as the Zuni. I also carry another name, Ms. Gatset, hummingbird, in the shape of a little buckskin doll. I serve as the Executive Director of the 7th Generation Fund for Indigenous Peoples, which is a 41-year-old Native-created, Native-led, philanthropic, and advocacy organization. We are focused on Indigenous peoples' self-determination, on our empowerment, on our re-indigenization. We are likely one of the oldest such organizations in the world that works within all contexts of the Indigenous experience, in all places of the Indigenous world, grassroots, regionally, nationally, and internationally, including at the United Nations, where we have special consultative status with the Economic and Social Council. Core to our work is the knowledge that effective, sustainable development and actions that take place within our lands and territories, in our nations and in our communities, will only be successful if it emerges from the peoples themselves, from our own peoples, from our people's aspirations, from our methodologies, from our realities, from our dreams. And at the very core, so many times, these grow from the hearts and from the brilliant minds of Indigenous women. Indigenous peoples know the inherent power of Indigenous women, power on our own terms, not of ego or of money, not of hierarchy or oppression, not of aggression or brutality, not of war. Power as an expression of love, power as an expression of peace, of generosity, of reciprocity, power in terms of humility, dignity, honor, and grace, as a reflection of our capacity to heal, as a manifestation of our responsibilities to nurture future generations, to do more than thrive, to do more than hold on to the crevices of existence by our fingernails, to thrive. That's real power. That Indigenous women are the backbones of our nations and the hearts as well, holders of sacred knowledge, transmitters of cultures, of songs, stories, spiritualities. That Indigenous women are connected to the moon and to the tides and to the universe, the caretakers of water, the carriers of new life, possessing the regenerative power and capacity, real power, to imagine, to innovate, to implement dynamic and leading edge strategies that are rooted, centered in the relationships to land, culture, community, and collective spirit. It is an honor to introduce to you this esteemed, this outstanding panel of Indigenous women leaders for today's plenary about the role of women in the revitalization of Indigenous communities. Our first speaker is Dr. Deborah Harry, Kuyu Takata. She is of those people from Pyramid Lake, Nevada, North America. Dr. Harry serves as a lecturer for Gender, Race, and Identity program at the University of Nevada. Dr. Harry's research analyzes the linkages between biotechnology, intellectual property, and globalization in relation to Indigenous peoples' rights. Dr. Harry has authored numerous articles related to the protection of Indigenous peoples' biodiversity and traditional knowledge, including the article Biocolonialism and Indigenous Peoples' Knowledge in United Nations Discourse in 2011. For also the Griffith Law Review entitled Indigenous Peoples and Gene Disputes, the Chicago-Kent Law Review. Deborah Harry.
Pisha uwamwa inamudui. Nuk inaniat kuitnap pukut mogotni. My name is Chief Eagle Horsewoman. My given name is Deborah Harry. Nukuyui Dakota. I'm a Kuiwi eater. Nukuyui Pop. My homeland is a place known as Pyramid Lake, Kuyui Water. I extend my greetings and acknowledge that we are in the ancestors and acknowledge the ancestors and the nations of this region of Great Turtle Island. I also extend my warm, heartfelt greetings to many of the friends, spiritual leaders, ceremony keepers, language keepers, everyone who is here working for the benefit of our future generations. I want to start my talk today at the beginning. That is the beginning of my world in my homelands in the desert, as described in one of our creation stories. Long ago, the whole world was underwater, except for one mountain. When waves came, they would touch the tails of the birds. The sun said, "I don't like to see water around here. I want it to dry up. And when it dries up, all kinds of animals shall come to the world, and they will use the Numu language." The sun said, "Go to the mountain and stay there. Anything that comes to the world after the drying up of the water shall be a relative." So these are one of our creation stories that tell us about who we are. They remind us that we've been here since the beginning of time. They remind us that the animals were here first, and they're our elder brothers and sisters. Our stories tell us that the people were created after the animals came. We are created in places that provide everything that we need to survive. And not only to survive, but to thrive. Our relationship with Mother Earth is reciprocal, and it's not based on domination or extraction. This is Indigenous knowledge, and it reminds us of who we are, where we belong in the world, deeply and originally Indigenous to our own homelands. The invasion of our lands and genocide of our people was based on the doctrine of Christian discovery. By order of the Spanish Crown and the Vatican in documents such as Dum Diversas on June 18, 1452. This document authorized Alfonso V of Portugal to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens and pagans and any other unbelievers to perpetual slavery. Historian David Stannard writes in his book, American Holocaust, that 60 to 80 million Indigenous peoples were killed at the hands of Columbus and his soldiers. The doctrine of discovery was based on a dehumanized view of non-Christian peoples and was used as justification for their acts of genocide and to dispossess us of our lands and to institute laws and policies that continued to oppress us to this day. In the United States, the U.S. Supreme Court decided in 1823 in the case Johnson v. McIntosh, where Chief Justice John Marshall made a ruling that diminished Indigenous peoples' rights to their own land. And did you know that he had a personal interest in the lands that were under dispute in that case? It's called a conflict of interest. He should have recused himself. And he used the rationale of white superiority and based his decision on the doctrine of Christian discovery in order to justify that decision. These beliefs of racial superiority and Christian domination are embedded in these foundational laws and policies in the United States today. We are experiencing an epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women and men. With law enforcement, media, and a justice system that turns a blind eye to any justice for the victims. Mass movements and struggles for justice, such as Idle No More, Standing Rock, the Tar Sands, Kinder Morgan, Mauna Kea, and more are unresolved in the face of unbridled greed and consumption. Not only have Indigenous peoples' lives been in peril since the invasion, on October 30th, just 2 days ago, the World Wildlife Fund reported that 60% of animals with a backbone, fish, birds, amphibians, reptiles, and mammals, were wiped out by human activity from 1970 to 2014. Indigenous peoples come from matriarchal societies, and we live our lives in accordance with our teachings and values that stand in direct contrast to the West. Indigenous peoples will always be in struggle as long as we continue to exist in these patriarchal systems of domination that perpetuate the colonial legacy. Settler societies must recognize that the land, resources, and wealth enjoyed in colonized lands is derived from the dispossession of land stolen from Indigenous peoples. Our allies and allyship, as we move towards the future, must begin with an honest discussion of these realities and to work to dismantle these systems of domination. We need allies who can vision another way to be human in relationship with all living things. Our future generations are depending on us to never abandon our struggle for true liberation and decolonization. Thank you.
The honor and pleasure of such a panel that you have the privilege, truly privilege of listening to today is luminaries such as these Indigenous women leaders are not always together to get a chance to share their thoughts and their brilliance with you. So I really appreciate that you're all here and listening so attentively. The next speaker is Naomi Lanois, who comes from a Maasai community in Kenya, Africa. Naomi's goal is to secure the social inclusion of Indigenous women into empowerment programs and activities. Her current project in Kenya focuses on advocating for effective implementation of constitutional provisions to secure women's land rights. Naomi graduated from James E. Roger College of Law at the University of Arizona with a Master of Legal Studies. She also holds a Master of Business Administration and Strategic Management from Jomo Kenyatta University. She's currently enrolled for a PhD in Gender and Women's Studies at Egerton University. Naomi Lanois.
I bring greetings from my country, Kenya. I bring greetings from my community, and I bring greetings from my family. Okay. I will start off my presentation with a story that will extend to my discussion for today, which is the role of Indigenous women in revitalizing Indigenous communities. You may have read this story, you may have heard about it, but what I know is you've never heard the story from me. Baby giraffes never go to school, but they learn a very important lesson, rather very early in life. A lesson that all of us would do well to remember. The birth of a baby giraffe is a quite earth-shaking event. The baby falls from its mother's womb some 8 feet above the ground. It shrivels up and lies still, too weak to move. The mother giraffe lovingly lowers her neck to smooch the baby giraffe. And then something unbelievable happens. She lifts her long leg and kicks the baby giraffe, sending it flying up in the air and tumbling down on the ground. Ouch. As the baby lies curled up, the mother kicks the baby again and again and again until the baby giraffe, still trembling and tired, pushes its limbs and for the first time learns to stand on its feet. Happy to see the baby standing on its feet, the mother giraffe comes over and gives it yet another kick. The baby giraffe falls one more time, but now quickly recovers before it receives another kick. Mama giraffe is delighted. She knows that her baby has learned an important lesson. Why does the mother giraffe do this? Mama giraffe knows that lions, leopards, and other prey love baby giraffe's meat. So unless baby giraffe quickly learns to stand and run with the pack, it will have no chance of survival. This story resonates with most of our Indigenous lives. A life of resilience. Our Indigenous mothers understand the level of marginalization in our countries. They love, they give us tough love that help us navigate through the system. They kick us out of our comfort zone to remind us that to survive and succeed, we need to learn to get back on our feet each time we fall. The systems we live in are so discriminative, and we can't just sit and whine. We got to fight. Get up. Stand up. The lion is coming. It's coming for our land. It's coming for our waters. It's coming for our natural resources. And unlike many other communities, the Maasai women are the ones responsible for building and maintaining our houses for our family. And this is symbolic to the critical role they play in giving life to our communities. Houses done by women are done out of love and careful processes of blessings for all its inhabitants. In these houses, we feel safe from wild animals. In these houses, new lives are created. The house is our meeting point for our daily activities. It's where we call home. It's where we call family. And just like they build our houses, they also ensure food security. And according to Food and Agriculture Organization, rural and indigenous women are crucial to reducing poverty, hunger, malnutrition, and to promoting social and economic development. We cannot talk of food security without including indigenous women. They play a critical role in feeding our communities and equally the society. Research shows that African women produce 80% of food in Africa. We therefore have to make their contribution visible towards ensuring gender equality and zero to hunger as aligned in the SDGs. The Maasai women, for example, play a very key role on food systems. They prepare and preserve our food with intricate meshes. We dry our meat to last for many months. A traditional yogurt milk can last for several days. This is adaptive to our livelihoods because these, among many processes, makes it easy for our survival in the arid and semi-arid areas. Our mothers are also our custodian to knowledge and culture. And sometimes I wonder, why are our indigenous cultures termed as primitive and backwards? Yet, our cultures is a cash cow for business for individuals. Culture is now tagged with a price. The more unique the culture, the more prone it is to exploitation. But our women pass and train the kids on our unique cultures through songs and dance, storytelling, and also our adorable beadwork. For outsiders, the elaborate beadwork, which I'm sure is common to all of us, is done by Maasai women. And I wanted to go through the colors, but I'm told my time is running out. Maybe I'll discuss the colors another day. Our women are also land governors and water protectors. Indigenous women all over the world have this special relationship with land and the waters. Land and the waters are our identity. If you ask me where I come from, I'll tell you the land, the territory, and that will make it very easy to identify what part I'm coming from in my community. We breathe life on the land and the waters. Any destruction on the environment is destruction to our wombs. Every mother wish is to give life and bring up their children in a clean environment. Brandy Morin, a Canadian indigenous woman, says that defending the land, it's taking care of that land and ensuring that those relationships within the land remain consensual. Women possess profound knowledge of their environment and have potential to adapt and build resilience to such risk as climate change. Thank you for listening to me. My sister has told me I can share the colors. You look at me and you see so many colors, but each color has a meaning. And all of them are aligned to the cows, to the cattle, because the cattle are very important to us. Red represents bravery, strength, unity, and the incredible challenges Maasai people face each day. Blue symbolizes energy and the skies from which we get our rain from. Green symbolizes the vegetation from which our animals feed on. Orange symbolizes the gourd from which we store our milk in. White symbolizes milk, and it's a color of hospitality. You come to our home, the first thing we give you is our milk. Yellow symbolizes the sun that enables the growing of plants. And black is the color of people who look after the cattle. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. Dr. Manulani Aluli Meyer is a Hawaiian scholar practitioner coming home to Oahu after many years in Hilo, Hawaii, in Aotearoa. She's a worldwide Indigenous scholar dedicated to expanding views of knowledge to better address the needs of our time. She earned her doctorate at Harvard in 1998 on the topic of Hawaiian epistemology, philosophy of knowledge, and remains dedicated to its capacity to inspire, to instruct, and to heal. She is active in the food sovereignty, EA Hawaii, and cultural landscaping movements throughout Hawaii, and she's now working to indigenize higher education in the University of Hawaii at West Oahu. Dr. Meyer.
Alana kahi amoy, lana mali e a oea I o. He I o kumu, he I o lau. He I o lono a ke aloha. E ho o ulu mai, e ho o ulu mai. E ho o ulu ai ka velina. A ke aloha, a ke aloha. A ke aloha, au te aloha mai ka koa pau. Mahalo nui no ko ike nahi nahi. Mahalo nui for the ideas of our panel members today. But before I summarize some of these ideas, I want to let you know that he kupuna kane e kupaya naha nahi nahi. Uncle Jim, your ideas were very inspiring. They remind me of the beauty of Hawaii. So mahalo nui, very clear, like my Auntie Lynette, my sister Miley right here. You remind me of family. So thank you for bringing that spirit that is vast, infinite, and expansive inside. Thank you. Shelley and the water gang, that ceremony this morning was fantastic. It really set the tone for the energy of this aha. And you see Auntie's eyes? Do you see those eyes? You see, look at her left eye. That is how I felt this morning. So thank you for that ceremony. It was very, very precious. We had the great privilege of listening to actually 3 women today. The clarity of your work here is very obvious. Thank you for your commitment to the love of land and the care of people. That is what indigeneity means to our women and to our people in Hawaii. We have to simplify the complexity of the world today in order to be heard, seen, and understood. And for me, the commitment that you serve to people is that quality. Because indigeneity is not simply a racial discussion, it is a movement of planetary awakening, it is commitment to land and service to people. Oya, vale, no. The love of land and the care of people is completely present in this woman, Deborah. She has been an outspoken advocate against our genetically modified organisms for so long. You have been so present around the world, Deborah. So many honor your work and affirm the clarity. But she spends her life reminding us of the context that we are healing in. And that's a commitment. She brought facts to the table. And the table is, we are traumatized. We have been traumatized. And you bring that to us over and over. That's a commitment. And I really thank you for that. Because those facts were hard to hear again. They are. They're hard. But then, you know, we get kicked because we're kind of giraffes. 8 feet. I thought they were making that house so the baby giraffe could fall more, you know what I mean? Yeah, fall softer. That's how we think in Hawaii. Like, just build something till the giraffe can fall, you know? But no, she kicks the baby giraffe even after it's walking because you better get strong now. And that is so true, Naomi, because that is where we are at. We are responsible for our own standing up. And we have been kicked by beloveds that want to help us. But now we are on our own. So I get much from that story. And by the way, from the color blue. Now, Uncle Jim, the color blue is energy. In Hawaii, as with many indigenous people, blue is the ancient color of love. See those friends right there? These friends summarize what Margaret was talking about this morning. Margaret's speech was unbelievably clear, wasn't it? She spoke about food sovereignty, women who plant trees, women who do conflict resolution. Every single one of these slides, these are young professors who are working together at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. They happen to be walking by like beautiful flowers, waving in the wind. And I knew one of them. I said, Mehana. And they all gathered. And I said, I'm going to take your picture. And those are friends working together in a transdisciplinary way at the University of Hawaii to help us awaken. They are dedicated to the love of land and to the service of people. And this is why these images are here, because they're women. Our women are the strength. The strength is our continuity. And that's my sisters. These are my sisters. That's my twin sister in the hat, in the lei. And they helped me move just recently. And they just came into the house, packed up everything, and in one day helped me move. Isn't that? And so your sisters, if any of you have problems in your family, I beg you to heal now, especially with your siblings and your sisters, because your sisters really are the backbone of ohana, of family. Please heal. And that's my twin sister. Does she look anything like me? No. She's this big, very dark, and she's been my best teacher. Because if you do not love what is completely different from you, what? What am I doing as an educator if I cannot do that? So at 60 years old, we have learned to love what is different and practice that. And that is what women teach me. That is what my siblings teach me. That is the commitment of the color blue, which is our ancient color of love. Blue sky, blue water, love. Love is an energy, love is a force, love is the primal force of our collective emergence. That is from Lee Irwin. I would say it, that aloha is the primal source of our collective emergence. And we mean it. That's the beauty. That is the beauty we as women know of. And that is why that is the picture. That's the beauty that I grew up, Uncle, with. That kind water. That's the water that I grew up with. That's at the muliwai where the fresh meets the salt. Evidently, we are salt and fresh water ourselves. So at the Muliwai, it is said that Mo'oi Nanea peopled it with mo'os. Mo'os for us are deities, energy, big lizards. It's old. Our stories are old. And they speak of mo'os. And mo'o for us also is the idea of continuity. And that is a very important one that women offer the world, is the concept of continuity. We hold the life force. We hold the capacity to extend life, to deepen our awareness to life, to link hands, and to animate the implicate order that has never not been present. Never not been present. And the energy of that is love. Love is not the highest value, it is the source of all values. And that's the generosity of the Creator who gave us this capacity to love the beauty of our spaces. So if you don't have a relationship with the outdoor world, please find one. Malokone mavahone, mavahone malokone. What is outside is inside. What is inside is outside. And that is the beauty that I know as a Kanaka wahine of Hawaii Nui Akea, the vastness of Hawaii. Hawaii is no longer a single place. It is a place of devotion to our principles, the idea of beauty, the practice of beauty with each other. Now that's what I've learned from women. And that's what I've learned for the love of land and the service to people. So mahalo e kia kua na kini kua na aumakua na kupuna. Thank you for this panel. Thank you for the opportunity to listen to your clarity and be inspired by your life and get to know you, Tia. So thank you for this.
Thank you to each of you for being here to have the opportunity to share some thoughts. And I'd like to invite our sisters forward just to stand here together. As you learn or understand about Indigenous peoples, we do everything together. We're a collective. And we stand together as sisters. Oh. Even for social media. Tadadaho, elakwa yakya elakwa. Thank you.
We're going to ask you to stay with us. Stay with us on stage.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Tia.
Thank you, yes. So now I'm going to introduce Lila June, who is of the Dene Nation, a musician, an anthropologist, a community organizer, and Indigenous rights advocate. And she's going to sing All Nations Rise.
Just before Lila June comes in, we're actually a bit behind schedule, so Lila's going to be our final performance, so she's going to end things off. So I've got a bit of an announcement, a couple of announcements, actually. If you really enjoyed this panel, there is a panel on Indigenous women in leadership. It's going to be led by Deborah Richardson, who's the Deputy Minister of Indigenous Affairs in Ontario, featuring Chief Ava Hill, Sylvia Miracle of the Ontario Federation of Indian Friendship Centres, and Coralie McGuire, who's the Executive Director of the Native Women's Association of Ontario. That's taking place in room 107 at 2:15. So the dialogue with Indigenous women will continue. So check that out in room 107 at 2:15. So the other little announcement is for those planning to attend the feast offering tomorrow, the Ancestors Feast in the Lodge of Nations. Please be on time. 9 a.m. is when it starts tomorrow, and the women are asked to wear their skirts. So thank you very much. On behalf of the Indigenous Working Group, I want to, on behalf of my co-chair, Diane Longboat, and all of our Indigenous Working Group, I want to wish you all a good rest of the Parliament. And then I guess we're going to bring out Lila June.
And Lila June, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ja, at eshik earo shidna eshe nanisht ejit kachit nishlindon. Big thanks to all of you who are still hanging on towards the end of this panel, and I'm grateful that you all are here I'm grateful to be able just to share a small song. And I asked my sisters and my aunties to please stand on the stage with me and just stand with me as I sing this, because this song is for all of them and all of their communities as well. And I thank you so much for letting me be a part of this today. Indigenous people, shine your light, we are equal, yeah, yeah. I remember the days when our prayers were illegal. I remember the days when being Indian was lethal, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we had a rough past, but get ready for the sequel. Get ready for the glorious comeback of our people, yeah. Rise up, all you warriors of love, all you answers to the prayers of our ancestors from above. I can feel it in my heart, can you feel it in your blood? I can hear the seventh fire calling us to wake up. All nations rise, rise up, 'cause now's your time. We don't have to hide anymore, 'cause now's our time. With forgiveness as my bow and my prayers as my arrows, pull it back and let go. I watch them fly like sparrows. Have hope, have hope. With compassion as my shield and faith down to my marrow, I will walk the pollen path even when it gets narrow. Yeah, yeah. Resurrect, yes, you can bet that we've seen the single mama raising children on the res. We've seen domestic violence tear apart what we have left. We've seen the alcohol take it all and leave us dead. We've seen the children take their lives when they can't take the dread anymore. No, we can't take the dread anymore. Or no, I won't take the dread anymore. 'Cause I can't take the dread anymore. Yes, it's a war, but we've seen it all before, and now we know we can change it, 'cause that's why we were born. We know we are the ones that we have been waiting for. Yes, we are the ones that Grandma has been praying for. So rise up, all you warriors of love, all you answers to the prayers of our ancestors from above. I can feel it in my heart, can you feel it in your blood? I can hear the seventh fire calling us to wake up. Pueblo hermoso, levántate, es nuestro tiempo. No tienes que esconderte más, porque ahorita es nuestro tiempo. This next verse is in Spanish to honor all the indigenous peoples south of that imaginary border by my homeland, which has divided a continent that was once very much connected. And even though Spanish isn't the indigenous language of those peoples, I know a lot of them speak it, so I want to speak to them at this moment. Mujer indígena, tú eres tan sagrada y traigas medicina de tu suelo todavía. A pesar del abuso de tu cuerpo y tu tierra, yo respeto tus ancestros y la suya cultura, hombre indígena. Tú eres honorable y yo veo la fuerza que todavía sobrevive a pesar del abuso de tu raza venerable. Yo respeto tus ritos, tus danzas, tus padres, guerreros del amor y guerreros de la paz. Sí, no vamos a escondernos más. We are warriors of love. We are warriors of peace, and we will not hide ourselves anymore. All nations rise, rise up, 'cause now's your time. We don't have to hide anymore, 'cause now's our time, yay. Thank you. Give it up for these women and this brother. Give it up for yourselves. I love you all. Rise up, Indigenous peoples of all skin colors and all backgrounds. We are all indigenous to somewhere. Find out where that is and learn the teachings. Hahe mitakwe oyasi.
Rise up. Ladies and gentlemen, Lila June Johnson. Trina Moyer, hey. Thank you very much, everybody. I encourage you to get to your first workshop as soon as you can. The program has begun, so have a great afternoon. Chimigwech.
Chimikwech. Hi, hi.